Good morning to everyone, and thank you for joining. We appreciate your participation and welcome you to the webinar, Financial Challenges and Opportunities in COVID Era. It is my pleasure to introduce Álvaro Quesada. He is our Finance Director at JA Del Rio with over 13 years of experience in accounting and tax for multinational companies. Before we start, I would like to mention that please feel free to send all of your questions during this transmission through the chat, and we'll be happy to answer them at the end in the Q&A session. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Let me share the agenda of today's webinar. We are going to talk about COVID global economic effect, financial challenges, and opportunities. So let me go ahead and get started with global economic effect. I'm going to start off with a quick timeline of what we all been experiencing. It all started on December 31st of 2019 when there was a mysterious pandemic sickening dozens in China. And a lot happened in January 2020 until January 30th, it was declared a global health emergency. And by March 11th, it was a global pandemic. So this is our unfortunate news, which we are all facing right now and in difficult circumstances. So with this being said, I would like to let Álvaro share with you the following statistics.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you everyone for joining. Like Ali mentioned, we're named this webinar using the ERA word because this definitely will set a precedent for the future. And we have to be aware that this is going to change the world, the way that we know it. So right after the World Health Organization declared it was a global pandemic on March 11, right away, stock markets and different countries start suffering such consequences. For example, on this slide, you will be able to see how it was the behavior of our exchange rate compared to the US dollars. As you can see, earlier this year, we had the range between 19 and 20. In fact, in February 18, we had the lowest in 2020, which was 18.57. But after the announcement, within the next 2 weeks, our exchange rate went really, really high, up to 25 pesos per dollar. So this means that it was an increase or depreciation compared to the US dollars for almost 35%. Right now, we are almost 21%. 20.98 today's exchange rate official issued by our government, and this was just an indicator. Definitely we have other indicators that are really important because they will give us more clues about where we can get an impact. So I'll let Ali to talk about the other indicator, which is the GDP. Well, before I go into that, just so you know, there are constant reports issued by different organizations about what is the forecast for all of this situation. For example, the World Bank's forecast that the economy worldwide will contract in about 5.2% this year. We've seen this already. In fact, this will be the 14th global recession within the last 150 years. And COVID is forecasted to be the fourth deepest after the end of World War II. So it's going to be severe. We're looking those consequences right now, and it's going to stay for a while. Other indicators also issued by International Monetary Fund on the latest report issued in October 2020 is about the GDP for specific countries. As you can see highlighted in that red circle, we have the United States will end with a negative growth of 4.3%. Things looks better for 2020. You can expect a 3.1% growth. That was the United States, but how about China, where the COVID started? We would believe that they will be suffering even more, but they are for sure. But certainly, since they are a very well oil engine economic, they still will show positive growth of 1.9. In 2021, they will go to their usual growth between 7 and 8.2%. How about Mexico? Mexico, well, the picture doesn't look good for us as well. It's going to be a shrink of 9% this year. Next year, according to this report, we can expect to have a growth of 3.5, which to my perspective is very optimistic, especially because of the economic actions implemented by our government. But I guess that's another discussion. That was GDP. There are other factors that Ali would like to explain, so I'll share the mic.
Thank you, Alvaro. So regarding those percentages shared, let's talk about the unemployment rates projected. It nearly reached 10% in OECD countries by the end of 2020, compared to the 5.3% at the end of 2019. And basically, it can go as high as 12% if a second pandemic wave hits, which is actually happening right now in Europe. So we don't project a job recovery until after 2021. So with this being shared, let's go ahead and talk about the unemployment rates in the United States. Basically, what has happened there in the last 50 years, there was a low rate of 3.5% on February, and then a huge increase of 14.7% on April, becoming the highest level of within the United States in the series. It has regulated in September, and it was at 7.9%, but well, these results are from the last 50 years of the working population in the USA. And what happened is that they had their lowest and their highest employment rates during this pandemic. For Mexico, things were very different. The highest point of unemployment was at 5.4%. And in July, by August, it lowered to 5.2. So there wasn't a huge difference. In Mexico, we have had an active economic population, but at the end of the day, we are in a crisis and people are struggling, unfortunately. So let's go ahead and go in a different topic right now. Now that we've shared that, let's go ahead and talk about business and what are their financial challenges. So Alvaro, what do you think is the main risk factor for companies right now?
Thank you, Ali. Yes, we're going into business with the financial challenges because there are too many, but I would say that the primary goal for those companies or even countries' economy is to survive the pandemic. We've seen a lot of news where they tell that very well-known companies went to bankruptcy. So this definitely is a nightmare for companies. They are trying to survive because most governments, especially at the beginning, since we reviewed that March, April, and May was probably the most complicated situation because it was a brand new situation. We weren't sure about how to react, but definitely government took actions and say, okay, let's stop doing business for a while so we can see if we can recover to the pandemic. But certainly that create a very complication for the companies, especially in the supply chain, that derives on an unprecedented closing of entities. For example, you may know JCPenney, Hertz, GNC, Cirque du Soleil. Those already filed to Chapter 11 bankruptcy in the United States. So consider the nature of your business. You need to be certain that you need to operate as much as you can to the extent of your possibilities. Talking about governments, they will lead us about how to surpass this pandemic. So we have to trust about their measures. One of those measures that you may recall, especially in Mexico, happened, is that companies must have to implement hygiene measures to obtain just a permit to open their doors to continue producing, selling, etc. So we will believe, okay, let's buy some antibacterial gel, the mask, the temperature controls, all of it. That seems very simple, but that wasn't the reality. How many of us struggle getting antibacterial gels? There was a shortage of those products that didn't allow companies to acquire them, so you can open the company to produce. So it was really a bad situation. Things are going better right now. People are producing those products even more because we need them. It's an essential product, so we have more offer of that, but still we may still be struggling access to them. Okay, so we talked that, okay, Alvaro, we know we can survive, that's for sure, but how can I survive? The fast answer will be, okay, you need to have liquidity, but we know liquidity is not something that will grow and freeze. You need to chase them. You need to look for different options to ensure a positive stream of flow to your company. And this is the job definitely for the CFO or the controllers to identify what is the amount of cash that you need to surpass the week, the month, the next quarter, or the next year. So you need to run all of those reports with as much information as you can obtain from prior years. Be attentive to what the news says, what is coming, because it's going to have an impact on your company. Hopefully not that big if you are well prepared, but it can be huge if you are not prepared. The big question here is, okay, Alvaro, when this is going to end? I don't have that answer. Hopefully next year when we start receiving the vaccines, things will look better, but definitely 2021 is going to be still a great year for most of us. So our recommendations for you is to do an updated or a revised forecast weekly or even daily, and have different scenarios. We know that most companies usually have 2 or 3 types of scenarios. The good one, the bad one, and the conservative. Probably now we only need to have the bad, the worst, and the even worst. But let's try to put as much information as we can identify, because we need the money. So how can we are going to ensure that positive stream of flow?
Now that you mentioned all these interesting items, Alvaro, and you mentioned that we need to have liquidity, in your experience, what are the main sources to ensure that cash flow enters the company?
Yes, Ali, thank you. Actually, on the slide, you will be able to see the 4 categories that I prepared here to identify the different sources that we can access to that liquidity. The first one, and the most common one for companies that are definitely more mature, will be the collection. But right now, how many of your clients already ask for a better payment terms, discounts, or even returned goods? That's a reality, and that especially happened right after the announcement of the global pandemic. But even that, still, how many of those clients that haven't paid you yet aren't giving you an answer about when you can get a payment? So what we recommend to do here is obviously to adapt as much as you can to ensure at least some cash going back into the company. You can offer special discounts for advance payments, or if the client tells you, okay, I'm going to pay you in 3 different periods, I'm sure you will accept most of those terms because you need that money. Definitely, this is also a good time for you. Well, not the best time for you, because obviously it's better to be prepared and have an agreement that is bulletproof, because I'm sure you already have an accrual of bad debts on your P&L and on your balance sheet, sorry. Companies needs to identify that potential situation that you're never going to get paid. So you need to act with that. And in Mexico, we have a specific accounting gap that tells you about how you need to calculate that bad debt, because as we will see on the next slides, the readers of the financial statements want to know how much you haven't collect, because that's a risk for you to not have enough funds to cover other obligations. Revise with your lawyers your master agreements with your clients, because if they're not going to pay you, you have a bad debt there, I'm sure you may have to take legal actions. But if you don't have all the documentation, this could be also another nightmare because you're not well prepared. So it's better to have most of the documents, signed agreements, revised clauses, updated versions, so you have more elements to survive a legal process, because let's face it, this may happen or is actually happening in your companies. That was one source. The other source for sure to me will be through the equity. We need to increase the equity to invest money in the company, but we're talking about that the company doesn't have money. How can we ensure or be sure that my shareholders have enough money to input part of that money into the company? That's probably a good question. Probably they do not have funds available because they have another investment in different projects, different companies. So what could happen if you want to go through the equity funding? You probably need to have an open mind, or maybe accessing or given the chance to participate through a different type of investors, like general public. You can go and do fundraising maybe. I'm sure there will be people that want to invest now, because it is also a window of opportunity, and we will talk about that later. Talking about equity, maybe last year was a good year for you and there were some profits. But right now, if you haven't paid them, probably it's important for you to review with the board that we need to hold this for a while. We probably need to reinvest those profits into the company to surpass this pandemic, because we haven't gone through the worst of it, probably. So I would like to give you those recommendations. The third source of cash, in my perspective, is through financing. You know, going to the bank, ask for a loan, that's for sure. But right now, how your balance sheet looks like, how leverage is your company? Can you have access to more credits or line of credit? Can you ask for an extension? I don't know, you need to have a close communication with your banks. We know that, especially in the US, those relationships are really bounded, because you are having the same bank since the beginning of the company. So talk to them, try to renegotiate, to extend payments, refinance the interest rate, so you can have access to beneficial treatment. Because let's face it, banks, especially in Mexico, we've seen that they are really empathic with the situation, and without even asking, the clients of the banks, they issue or reduce the rates and offer holding payments for a couple of months. So they're certain that there's people looking for money, and they have money. So they're willing to offer you that, and even probably giving you better rates, because it will be more competitive that most banks want or are willing to loan that money. So close communication with them, revise your forecast, and see if you can afford having a second or a third line of credit or an extension of credit. But you need to identify the numbers so you can go with the bank and say, okay, I need X amount of money. Another way of financing, in my perspective, that sometimes is not our first choice, because you want to have your account receivable paid in full, but there are the factoring companies that can offer you that financing that you're looking right now. We know that invoicing through factoring could be a solution that helps companies stabilize the cash flow by unlocking that cash that is sitting on the pay receivables. We talked about that a couple of slides before, telling you that you may have a bad debt. Okay, so why don't you sell that account receivable to a factor company? They will pay you, obviously not in full, because they need to have also some benefit. They will get a commission, a discount, or charge you some fee. But the benefit of going into that source is that you don't have to repay anything, and there will not be an interest to be charged. For example, if you have 100 on your account receivable, maybe you get paid 60 or 70, and the other 30 is up to the factory company to collect, so they have the revenue or the profit. But for you, it's 60 on your banks rather than have 0 within 3, 4, 6 months when you are going to start collecting back all your accounts receivable. A recommendation for you is to review, explore all different options, approach to factory companies. Maybe they have developed a plan for this situation that could be interesting for you. So you probably need to pay attention to what is out there that they can offer. Within the other basket of type of sourcing, I have a few more options. Tax refund, and I'm talking more about Mexico for sure, but depending your country, depending your tax, you are liable to ask refund for taxes that you have filed and paid to your government. So review with your tax advisor, with your tax team, if there are balances that you can claim in favor, because that can be also a continued source of funding. In Mexico, for example, we have the VAT. VAT is a monthly tax. So you have a balance in favor in January, you can start filing for a refund right after you've filed the taxes for sure in February, and so on. So you can maybe ensure having additional funds coming into your company every month. Definitely that involves take actions with your accountants, prepare the reports, be prepared about that maybe the government will request additional information to confirm that the number you're requesting is correct, and it's going to take a while for sure. The average time for you to get a tax refund in Mexico is between 2 to 3 months because of the timing that you have to present evidence, but also to the government to request documentation to support the process. That's another option. Review that internally, review your balance sheet, see how much you have there, because it can help you to face other obligations. Talking about the government should be protective and needs to offer solutions to this kind of situation. So I'm sure there are incentives that the government are preparing for different types of industry or different types of business. You need to be aware that there will be some benefit that you can apply for it, but you need to look out and see what the requirements are. If there are some kind of restriction, if there are a capped amount, but certainly that can be another source, especially in these challenging days. For example, Mexico is not one of those countries that will grant or offer that much to companies. They prefer to offer that kind of money in different social programs, but right now the state is usually the one that is giving you more incentives. For example, we have one in the state of Jalisco that they will give you about $5,000 if you keep the same headcount for the last 3 consecutive periods. Probably it's not that large amount of money, but certainly $5,000 can help you maybe to pay salaries for a week, for a month, or pay your vendors or any other thing that you believe is a primary payment for you to make. There are other different types of source of cash for the company. I'll let Ali to talk about a couple of them. So, Ali.
Thank you, Alvaro. Those are all great options. I mean, at the end of the day, we have to have as many options on the table so we can provide a solution. And another option that would be nice and significant can be selling fixed assets. So basically here in the assets, what we can do is you can sell your desks, your furniture, the chairs. If you're not using them and you have people in home office and you have an empty space, well, it would be great. It would be a great option to sell them. Many of our clients have done this and they have paid salaries, which is the primarily expense. And at the end of the day, you don't need them. So let's look at the other options, sublease office space. As you are in the same situation, there's many other companies that are looking for another attractive solution. Maybe they have an office space that is really big and they still need people go directly to the facilities. So in this case, it would be great to find those allies that can work with you, and they would leave that office space that is humongous, and then they can go with you, and you can have you can sublease that space, and it would be having the split expenses, and it would be a good option also for you and for the other company. At the end of, you do have to review this with your contracts and review that it would be a possibility. But those are two options that can definitely help the company in these difficult times. Okay, so with this being said, with all of these wonderful options that we have, now that we have the resources and money in the bank and a continuous stream of money, so what are we going to do with this money? Alvaro, can you go probably into detail on the options of what we can do with the money?
Sure. Thank you, Ali. Yes, for sure here we have to be really creative with those options. Certainly when we have the cash and we identify what we need to do with that money, obviously we need to continue looking to reduce our costs. Companies need to prioritize their spends and look how to reduce costs to optimize their cash position. So now we are talking about a strategic cost management. Every dollar you save, it will count. So no matter how small can be the amount, you think it's probably not that interesting. I'm sure through the periods, it can make a difference. So take a look into that, review your forecast, see where you need to put that money. I would like to share some of the lines on the P&L that maybe we can reduce the cost. We can start talking about salaries. Salaries definitely is right now one of the concerns for the company, how you're going to pay salaries. You need the people to work, to produce, to sell. And if you don't have that, you cannot access to the funds. So it's like a full cycle there. Definitely one of the things that we've seen in some of our companies, of our clients, is that they stop hiring people right now. It's on hold because it's uncertain. You need to revise your growth plan for your headcount because probably you don't need, and in fact, probably you need to cut or let people go, especially those that are not productive, because you want to optimize every resource you have. So you have one of resources that is not giving you the results that you need, it's going to cost you, or it's costing you right now. So that's a situation that it's happening right now, something that we don't like to do, let people go, but probably you need to revise that situation. Please consider that, for example, in Mexico, you need to pay a severance, which is usually 3 months of salary plus the benefits. So it's going to cost you, and it's going to be a cash payment for you right away that you probably haven't considered. So include that on your forecast because you have obligations as an employer. Definitely salaries will be revised next year, or maybe this year already reduce some of those salaries. We've seen companies, they have a reduction of 10, 20%, and they going back to 100% within 3 months period. Why? Because money was not in the company, so they needed to also talk to the employees, explain the situation, and let's be honest, right now we see the rates for unemployment. How many of family or friends you have heard that they lost their jobs? So right now, if there's a person that is having a job and it's getting paid, they have to be really happy about that because there are too many people looking for jobs. So maybe they also need to be empathic and put something on their own to let the company continue doing business so they can get paid in full. So it's a dual situation. Talk to the employees. It's definitely not an easy talk, but certainly if you explain the facts, what you're doing, what's the goal, what's the objective for this plan of survival, maybe they will be empathic, or at least most of them should be empathic and thankful that you're trying to do the best to continue having the company and paying their salaries. We talk about salaries. Obviously, it's included the effect of the taxes related to salaries, so maybe there can be some small reduction there as well. The rent, we talk about the rent. Definitely, people are not working in full. So the rent, if you can negotiate terms like most of your clients already try to negotiate with you, you can do the same. And not only with your landlord, with all the other vendors, you can get or they can offer. Talk to them, be empathic, and try to explain the situation. We know that you want to pay your obligations, but right now the situation is really complicated. Maybe with an extension of payment or special discounts, it can help you to improve your cash position. Definitely going home office, it's one of the opportunities that we will talk a bit more in the next slide. And revise, if you need to have, that 10,000 square facilities, maybe you only need a third of it, or maybe just a small portion of it, and you need to look out for different options. Talking about options and going to home office, definitely the Capex is one of those concepts that company needs to address because they are really important. In these times, you probably need to defer those Capex investment, or if not, try to optimize as much as you can. If we're going now to home office and start working remotely, you probably don't have the infrastructure yet. But if you do, you still need to continue buying laptops, servers, all your infrastructure. So this is where you need to put that money to invest in your company, not necessarily cutting expenses I have will be the best solution, because you need to optimize that and put the money where you can expect to have some returns or benefits. So this is one of those concepts that you need to review in your forecast, see where you need to invest. Don't be afraid to invest. Please consider that probably in a midterm or a short term, maybe you can have positive results. There are other areas where we can reduce costs, and even if we are not doing too much to reduce, the pandemic by itself is helping you to reduce this cost. Like travel and entertainment, there are restrictions on traveling, especially from one country to another. Maybe there are some within your country, going from one state to the other, and still people are afraid, or most of the people are still afraid to go out there. So probably they don't even want to go, even if it's a work process that they need to go. So that for sure is going to be reduced. Office supplies, if you're not having too much people in the office, probably you don't need to buy office supplies. Or maybe you do, because you need to give them the tools to the employees so they can work. But I guess that's something that you can discuss with them. Other option to reduce cost is insourcing contractor activities. Explore taking over activities that right now are outsourced by third parties, as this could represent a significant saving down the road. I'm including here a couple of concepts that can fit within this contractor category, like recruiting, accounting, training. If you have your own HR department, why you would like to outsource recruiting? Maybe you go to a specialized company that it's 100% certain that they will find the right people for you. Okay, why don't you try to absorb that and save that 1 month or 2 months salary that they will charge you for finding that people? This could be an option. Same thing with accounting. Probably I'm an accountant, so I understand that this is challenging. We're talking about sensitive information, so you need to have the right people to do that. But if you can train your people, explain the process, do it smoothly or as much as prepared as you can, taking over those activities can save some taxes for your accountants. For example, us, maybe instead of us doing the bookkeeping, we can do then quarterly reviewings, try to give you more solutions and giving you the plus, not really doing us the hard work. Training, same thing. You can name different type of categories. Insourcing contractors can be a good solution, but maybe also outsourcing can be a solution. We will talk about that later, but it is not just insourcing activities. In your company transactions, as you may be aware, if your company is a transnational company, if you're dealing between related parties worldwide, as the economic is affecting global economies, we are expecting, or at least that will be our logic, to see that there will be some kind of adjustment on the margins that are going to be prepared by your transfer pricing expert. And maybe that can be a saving that we will be able to see on your P&L. And definitely those kind of savings or adjustments on your transactions with related parties, if it's an inventory, if it's management fees, or maybe royalties, they may have an impact on the taxes. So maybe you can have also benefit on the tax side of it. So take a look into that, review with your tax advisor what could come. If there are some kind of preliminary work, you can do that to start accruing those adjustments on your books. That could be a good idea. And if not, let's see what the end transfer pricing study says. And if there's an opportunity to adjust that it's according within those guidelines, probably will be a good idea to access to it. Please consider that there could be some repercussions in the future, or maybe you can have that benefit in the future. Explore those options, analyze as well, and do what you believe is the most ideal thing for your company.
Definitely. Well, that was some relief to talk about those options and explanation. Thank you, Alvaro. I mean, I think we all learned some examples to reduce costs. And now let's talk a little bit about some opportunities that we can take right now during this COVID era. Go ahead, Alvaro, I'm gonna leave it to you.
Thank you. Yes, like most situations, there's always not just a bad side of it. Opportunities can be happening right now. We need to keep an eye open to see where is an improvement area for my company or to do business, because definitely the pandemic has started a revolution about how companies in general will strategically approach their business or their model going forward as they have to deal with the day-to-day operations. This crisis has forced the business to adapt about how they operate, how they manage the workforce. There are those government mandates that we've seen earlier in this presentation, and how you are reacting, and so are your employees. What are their needs? Definitely, it's creating an opportunity. We will talk about some of those opportunities. One of them definitely is the e-commerce. It's probably not a brand new thing, but definitely it's taking a lot of increase on their sales. I'm including here some facts that I review on the census government. They issue a report a few months ago saying that within the first 6 months of 2020, it represents the same growth that the United States had in the last 5 years. For example, from Q1 to Q2, there was an increase of e-commerce sales for 30%. All industries could be benefited from this situation. We named some of them with a quotation, maybe retail, grocery, technology, entertainment, and Mexico is not the exception. 5 out of 10 companies in Mexico doubled their internet sales from April to June, right after the pandemic was declared. And 2 of those 10 grow 300% or even more. You can also identify different types of approach to e-commerce. We've seen that the methodology, if we can name that, about buying online and picking in the store had a huge increase. Amazon, for example, is also expecting to sell almost 100 billion year to date by the end of the Q4. So it's a humongous amount of money because the platforms are being used by new consumers. Or if you are a usual consumer right now, I'm pretty sure you're buying more online now than what you are used to do in the past month or the past year, for example. This could be a solution. Definitely, if you want to go there, probably you cannot rely on 100% of your sales to be through this source. You need to find the right balance between direct sales or your formal channels of distribution, but definitely e-commerce could be an option that could represent a continued growing for you. Definitely, like we've seen that you need to have your Capex well identified. Maybe this is where you need to put the money. Develop your own e-commerce store or access to the ones that are already that are famous, you know, Amazon and all of the others. This can also be another option to outsource, for example, logistics. We talk about that maybe insourcing some, it's the best solution, but maybe outsourcing some of those activities can also be more simple for you and reduce cost. If you access and use the Amazon platform, they will do the delivery. Maybe you don't need to have those 10 warehouses in your country, and you can use Amazon's. They will cost you for sure, but you probably won't need to have 10 warehouse employees working 24 hours or even on weekends. That's another option, an alternative. We've seen companies that are going into that direction. This could be yours. Don't be afraid to explore that. Be prepared, do your research, and approach to experts that can give you the right tools to make this happen the better way. Other opportunity that I found very interesting is the joint ventures. This could represent another source of financing for sure, as they can help you to develop new business models or try to reach a new client targets. This may not be the shortest solution. Probably this is in a mid-term or long-term, depending how complex is your business or how you want to approach to a different company to help you in this venture. You definitely need to do your due diligence, your homework about if it's good or not to do this. But please consider that companies are trying to survive now, but also are trying to expand. If you have on your own plan for the next 10, 20 years, probably you have some kind of expansion that may or may not involve having a joint venture party. So you can explore this. This could be a good alternative. For example, if you are the ones that are selling raw material to manufacture those special masks to avoid COVID, why don't now you start manufacturing? This is an opportunity, but maybe you are not into that business, so you can approach another vendor that maybe have the infrastructure but doesn't have all the money. You can combine efforts and make a very well developed business that can help you to grow your sales. So take a look into that. This could be a perfect timing maybe. I don't know, it would depend on different factors, but certainly the option is there. Keep an eye on it, maybe on your competitors, maybe through your vendors, or maybe through investors, see what is out there. You probably need to open a second line of business or a side business that allow you to have continuous profits, or maybe not profits at the beginning, because we know this is a long-term ride, but this could be the beginning of something that can help you going into that direction. We have one more opportunity. Ali, why don't you talk about this?
Well, the famous home office, right? So basically right now companies had to adapt rapidly to this home office, and we knew that this was coming. And basically right now it has shown a lot of possibilities for everyone, and it has shown to be a very good result. Even though having the possibility of working from home sounds great, there comes a lot of challenges. Since we still have to train new hires, we still have to control all of the employees that they still are working properly, it can become difficult, but it is a nice environment and definitely safe in this situation. I mean, COVID came to change everything, 360 degrees. Things will no longer be the same, and everyone has to learn new ways of working, and we have to learn to evolve and to be better. Like all the examples that Alvaro mentioned, right now what we have to do is just move forward, look forward, and act and evolve, like I said. So these are the opportunities that we have for you today. Before we finish, I would also like to just hear a little bit more from Alvaro. Maybe he can provide a quick summary of what we just talked.
Sure.
And finish.
Thank you, Ali. Well, definitely this is a new situation for everyone. The better that we can adapt and embrace this situation and try to take as much as we can, that will be the best for us. Keep an eye to all of the opportunities, have a close communication with your clients, with your vendors, your government. There are ways to surpass this pandemic. At the beginning, I was mentioning that this will be the 14th recession. So even though it's new for us, it's new for the world. We've been there and we have surpassed. So I'm sure we're going to surpass this, but we need to do our part. Keep the distancing between employees, work from home, try to be safe, and try to do business working on that environment and look for those options. There are options there that you can explore. There are businesses that are selling crazy right now because they took advantage of it. So why don't we try to have a cut of that? Try to do that. Continue working with your team. Like Ali said, this is brand new. Most recent articles that I've seen, the productivity, it's been increased within home office. So we have to embrace that. It's something that is gonna be here for a while. And let's see what happens. Do your forecast, review your numbers, try to be more efficient on having that cash where you need to put that. And we will definitely survive this situation.
Yes, we will, Alvaro. Yes, we will. We should. We have to. So thank you so much, Alvaro, for sharing all of this valuable information. I hope everybody enjoyed this. And before we continue on to the Q&A session, I would like to say to everyone, thank you so much for being here and attending and sending questions. I would just like for you to help me with this following question, if you can help me answer it so we know if, thank you so much for participating. So let's go ahead and move on to the Q&A sessions. I see here that we have a couple of them in, and they're very interesting. So let's go ahead and get started with these questions. Let's see here. Let's go ahead and move on to the last slide. And all right, so here we go. We have this first question, Alvaro. Do joint ventures have specific tax treatment in Mexico? Great one.
Yes, tax treatment, not really. In Mexico, there is a consolidation tax regime, but not really for a joint venture. Usually when you have your joint venture, either you create a new company or through each company do business, but each part of it have their own sales, their own costs, and their own obligations. So there's not really a specific tax regime in Mexico for joint ventures.
Great. That's a good answer. Thank you, Alvaro. I have here a long one and a good one too. Is it better to ask for a loan from the parent company or from the subsidiary in Mexico? That's good.
Okay, yeah, that's a good one. Well, usually the US rates are lower than Mexico. Usually we've seen that the subsidiary in Mexico is being financing through the US company. I think it makes more sense to have that directly on the parent company rather than Mexico. But if that would be the case, consider that there are other implications like withholdings for the interest that the parent company is going to charge you. We also talk about the transfer pricing, that interest rate, even if you ask that on your bank, but you are going to lend some of that money to Mexico, they have to be within the same ranges. There are other rules, for example, in Mexico about the back-to-back that can be considered those payments dividend. So there are, I would say, some considerations that you need to review. But in terms of going with the banks, I think it's better going with the US that are offering lower rates than Mexico.
Excellent, excellent answer. Thank you so much, Alvaro. Let me go ahead and let's try one more and see if we have time. Here, let me see. If a client does not pay what they owe, can the company have a tax benefit?
If the client haven't paid you, if there's a tax benefit, give us a salary. Okay. Well, I guess this is going into the bad debts. If the client haven't paid you, there's a tax benefit. Yes, in the sense that that accrual for bad debt can be deductible for tax purposes. So it will not give you the cash that you're expecting, but at least can help you on your tax return as a deduction. In Mexico, I can tell that it will depend also on the amount. The amount, if I recall correctly, is about $5,000. If it's below that range, it's more easier to access to that deduction. If it's greater to the 200,000 pesos, $5,000, you need to go and take some legal actions like suing the client for not paying you, so you can have access to the reduction. And also there's more compliance involved, like sending information to authorities, some letters. But yes, it is a deduction, not really a benefit by itself, more like a deduction.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Nice for that information. Very important. So do we have time for one more?
Yes, I think we have 3-4 minutes.
Okay, excellent. Let me go ahead and ask one more. What is the process of increasing equity in Mexico?
Okay, that's one type of the cash and sources that we talk. It is possible if you are a company, depending the type of equity company that you have, you need to have a shareholder minute in both cases. You can do that with your lawyers, especially in these days with some new rules from our government. Those shareholders are recommended to be notarized, so they become more formal and supportive. So once you have that document, you can do the entry on your books. But if you are going to infuse the cash, you need to make the payments. So we can tell is the cycle flows. You need to report maybe that increase of equity if the amount is greater than 20 million, if I remember correctly, with the foreign investment offices. But I guess that's a very simple thing to do, but you need to have a formal document that supports that increase of equity. Talk to your lawyers, notarize them if possible, and that should be it. It could take a few days, I guess, but it's something that can be done fairly quickly.
Excellent, excellent. I hope hopefully that answer provided a clear path with the process. And I am reading a lot other questions, but right now it would be great if you can all send, because I see a lot of them being very personalized. So if you would all be so kind in sending all of your questions to our email shown on the screen, and we will reach out personalized and send the answers through email, and we'll be happy to help you in any other questions that you may have. Also, I would like to say to the public that you can also find our webinar sessions in our YouTube channel if you need to re-see them or download them. So basically, we have reached the end of the webinar, and I would like to say, a part of Jada Rio, helping companies do business in Latin America, appreciates your interest and remains at your service for any other questions you may have on this subject or any other in particular. Please feel free to contact us through the email shown, and we are very happy to help you. Thank you all for joining, and have a great day.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and see you on the next webinar.